Good afternoon, everybody. This is Mr. Finesti. Hope everybody's well. Okay, what we're going to be looking at today is exercise 1.13, random hurdles. A few of you have written in saying you're a little bit stuck on this one, so I figured it might be worth going over, taking a look at certain concepts like loops, particularly the for loop. So our exercise is as follows. We're going to write a program that has the dog run to the other side of First Street, running over all of the hurdles. Karel should only jump if there's a hurdle blocking the way. However, the hurdles can be in random locations. The world is 14 avenues long. Okay, so we know how many times Karel has to move. Okay, we know that it's going to be 14. Okay, because as they say, he's going to be jumping over to the other side of First Street. Now, this horizontal portion of our world, this is the world, is known as a street. Okay, the vertical part they're calling avenues. So we know that we have 14 avenues in this rectangle. We know that in advance. So the better loop to use would actually be a for loop as opposed to a while loop. A while loop basically repeats code while a certain condition is true. A for loop repeats code basically X number of times, which you can specify. And you may have already gotten familiar with the for loop, but just in case, let me show you again. It says we also need to write a function named jump hurdle as part of the solution. So let's check it out. Okay, I'm going to first demonstrate the for loop. Okay, so in my code, I'm not going to actually write the solution here. Not yet anyway. I'm going to show you how a for loop works. So for loops, of course, always start with the keyword for, and it's followed by parentheses. Okay, the first thing we have to do in a for loop, and there are for loops in all kinds of programming languages, not just JavaScript. They work pretty much exactly the same way. They may be written slightly differently, but they're basically identical in the way they work. So the first thing we have to do in a for loop in the parentheses, after we write for and the parentheses, is we have to designate a variable, a counter variable. So normally we call it I, could be called anything. I could call it count, I can call it Joe, doesn't matter. But I'm going to call it I, which stands for index, and I'm going to set it, the initial value I'm going to set to 0. Okay. Now computer languages actually start counting in zeros. They start counting at 0, I should say, not 1. Okay. 99.9% of the programming languages in the world start to count at 0. Okay. Next thing we're going to do, once we set our counter up, is we're going to have to check the counter, and this is all done in the parentheses. So what I'm going to do is, this is the crucial part of the loop. I'm going to compare the value of the counter against a number that I want the loop to go to. So let's say I want this loop to go 3 times. I want this thing to repeat 3 times. So I'm going to put I less than 3. Okay, and then the final portion of the loop is going to be incrementing the counter. So inside the parentheses, I'm going to type in an I, and then I'm going to use this operator, this double plus operator, I++, which just basically means increment my counter by 1 every time the loop goes around once. So after the parentheses, I'm going to need a set of curly braces, and that's what's going to contain the loop code, the code that's inside the loop. Okay, now in my loop code, I'm just going to do something a little that you wouldn't have seen this before, but in JavaScript there's something called an alert box. I'm going to use the alert box to display what's happening in the loop. So just don't pay too much attention to this, but this is basically what I'm doing is I'm going to have a pop-up box come up every time the loop goes around, and it's going to show a different value. And what I'm doing is I'm just typing in some strings, a text string, and I'm going to connect that to the variable I, okay, with a bunch of plus signs, and then this is going to be a message that you're going to see inside the loop. The word iteration just means repeat. Okay, so I'll show you. I'm just going to run this and I'll show you how it works. So when I run it, here's the pop-up. notice it says this is the 0 iteration of the loop. Okay, it's just simply displaying the counter, the value of the counter. The first time we come into our loop, our counter is set up with 0. The loop is that the condition, I should say the loop condition here, is actually checked. So 0 is compared against 3. In this case, is 0 less than 3. I'm using the less operator, less than operator. As long as this is true, as long as this condition evaluates to true, the loop will continue. Okay, so as long as I is less than 3, the loop is going to go. The loop's going to actually repeat. Now, in the first time we go in, this is going to be checked. That's going to be set to 0. This is only done once. This is done every single time the loop goes around, and even the first time. And this is done only after the loop has gone around once, and then thereafter it's done, the increment of the counter. So you're going to see when I hit OK, it's going in. It says now this is the first iteration of the loop. So what happened was when I clicked OK, the condition was checked. I'm sorry, the I was incremented, I++, by 1. So now 0 was incremented by 1. So now I is equal to 1. 1 less than 3. Okay, 1 is less than 3, so that's still true. And then I went back into my loop and displayed the counter. Now I'm going to click this again. Okay, the counter was incremented by 1, and now it's 2. The value is 2. It's again comparing. Is 2 less than 3? Yes. That's still true. So we went in and did this. Now I'm going to do this again. Okay, I'm going to click OK. Now we're done. We got out of the loop because once I incremented my counter to 3, this statement became false. 3 is not less than 3, and we get out of our loop. So that's basically how this works. Okay, so let's look at the code. All right, let's see what we have to do with this. So according to this, let's look at our exercise really quickly. We're going to we need to write a function named jump hurdle as part of the solution. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is actually do my start. That's my main part of my program. Okay. And I know they had a comment that said, write your code here, which I am going to do. Okay. So I'm going to go just a little bit below this. I'm going to put it in the curly brace, and I'm going to connect. I'm going to do my jump hurdle function. So below my start function, I'm going to type a new function called jump hurdle. Okay, and I'm going to need some curly braces. Okay, and then I'm just going to put in some code. Okay, we're going to need Karel to turn left. Okay, so he's going to be then facing north. Then we're going to need to have him move. So he's going to move up 1. Okay, so then he's going to be here. And then I need him to turn around again, or turn back to the right. Okay, now we're using the super function, turn right. Okay, so he's going to be facing towards the east. Then I need him to move to here. So I'm going to move. Okay, and then I need him to turn right again. So he's facing south. And then I need him to move back down. So he gets to this point over the hurdle. And then I need him to turn so he's facing east again. So I need him to turn back to the left. Remember, we're sort of taking Karel's point of view. Okay, so in this case, he would need to turn left in order to face east. Okay, so that's my jump hurdle function. So I already have my function written. I'm going to go back up to my loop, and I'm going to start typing in my. I'm going to go back to my start function and start typing my loop. So I'm going to type my for loop. Okay, now for var equal. Var I equal. How many times do I need to do this? Let's see, I'm going to set this to 0. And then my conditional statement, I'm going to say 13. Why not 14? Because we're starting our count at 0. So if you start to count at 0, you're going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, 10, 11, okay, and 12. And then 13, Okay, so let's count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, and then so 12 actually becomes the 13th iteration. Okay, because we started at 0. So that's not a problem. Okay, if you want to start at 1, if you feel like it makes it easier, you could start it at 1, but just make sure that if you don't change you can either change this, make this 14, okay, or you can leave it at 13 and just make sure you add an equal sign, okay, which will mean that it's going to be less or equal to 13. So it includes 13 if you're going to start at 1, but I'm just going to keep it the way I had it before. Okay, just play with it. Okay, and the last thing I need to do is I have to increment my counter. Okay, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to need another set of curly braces for my loop code. Okay, don't put a semicolon after your loop, after the loop statement itself. Now the first thing I want to do is I want to check, is the front clear? In other words, are we at the end of our world? So I'm going to need to put a conditional statement, an if statement in. If front is clear, I can use the Boolean value, front is clear. Well, it's actually more of a method, a super method. Okay, so I'm going to need another set of curly braces for my if statement. Okay, if front is clear, I want the dog to move. So I'm going to click move. Okay, otherwise, if there's an otherwise, if you want them to do something else, you use your else. Otherwise, we're going to then, if the front is clear, if the front is not clear, we'll be either at the end of our world over here, or we're going to be at a hurdle. So if the front is clear, okay, we're going to move. Okay, that means there's nothing there. Else, we're going to jump the hurdle. And we use jump hurdle, and this calls the function down here. Now, functions are never actually used until they're called, and this is a calling statement that's going to do that's going to actually call this function down here, jump hurdle. We're going to put that into our main loop. Okay, just watch your indentations. Okay, they try to help you out with these little lines, very light gray lines. It'll kind of give you an idea. So let's do this. Let's run this program. I'm going to make this really fast. So I'm going to click run. And let's see if this is going to work. You can see how the code is working. Okay, when it goes to jump hurdle, it moves it down there. Okay, looks good. I'm going to then change my world so it's a different size. Make sure this works in all of the 4 worlds. I'll make this bigger, make it as fast as possible. That looks good. That looks good. And that looks good. I'm going to check my code. It looks all they look happy. Okay, so that's how you do random hurdles. Okay, use this information for additional exercises. Okay, and you can pause it and rewind the video and just check it out. But that's how a for loop works. Those are the various parts of a for loop. It's very convenient because everything's done here inside these parentheses. So you have actually 3 statements in one. You have your loop counter gets created and gets initialized to a first value. You have your conditions that evaluates to see if your counter is above a certain limit. Okay, and then you have your counter increment, which gets incremented every time the loop goes around, except for the very first time, because you've already set it to 0. Okay, and then we've also looked at functions. You can see that jump hurdle is a custom function that you wrote. So just like move is a function that you don't see, we actually wrote jump hurdle. That's our custom function. So when we call the function by its name, it's going to put control down to your function. That's going to be executed, and then it goes back up. And this loop just goes around 14 times. Remember, we start at 0. All right, any questions? Let me know. Thanks.